We have three scriptures that we're reading today. The first is from Habakkuk 1, verses 1 through 4. The oracle that the prophet Habakkuk saw, O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not listen, or cry to you violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see wrongdoing and look at trouble? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law becomes slack, and justice never prevails. The wicked surround the righteous. Therefore judgment comes forth perverted. The second reading is from Psalm 103, verses 1 through 6. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and do not forget all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good as long as you live, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord works vindication and justice for all who are oppressed. The final scripture is from Matthew 11, verses 28 through 30. Come to me, all who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Friends, let us pray. Holy and loving and just and present God, may our words and our thoughts, our actions and action be a blessing to you and all that you. Amen. I think we care a lot about justice. I almost wore my Justice, It's a Jesus Thing t-shirt to prove it, because if it's on a t-shirt, you are deeply committed. Haven't we watched as the evidence of a court case is presented, having cheered or grieved as juries came back with decisions? Did you know that Law and Order has been on TV since 1993 and has 6 spin-offs and a movie? Not to mention the many innumerous similar shows that have been put on since Law and Order started. Of course, there are lots of shows like it that started before. And not all, and that is not to be done or as if it were more than the reality that we live in as well. There are dozens of judges whose response to their court cases have made them TV presences, TV stars. Judge Judy's been off the air for years, and she is still the person we say, why don't you take it to Judge Judy? And, of course, there are hundreds of true crime movies, shows, podcasts, and books, whatever you might need to scratch that itch for justice or true crime. Maybe we're just people that like to see consequences. And it's a little hard, though, because since 1993, we have been told that the criminal justice system is represented two groups of people, the police and the prosecutors. Ba-bum. And it has been drilled into us, and yet, We also see our real world news that sometimes one or both of these groups don't necessarily seem to be on the side of the people. Our criminal justice system becomes retributive. Sometimes it is an eye for an eye, but sometimes the eye for an eye, we've talked about, it's the goat, right? You stole my goat, you give me back a goat, now we're even. Instead of an eye for an eye, it's that you stole my goat, and now you should die. And I will probably take all of your chickens and cows. And if it's on a tribal or a national level, then your family and everyone you've ever met has to die too. All of that is to say, our day-to-day understanding of justice when we are outside of these four walls has some problems. Now, that isn't to say, I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences for actions, or that maybe there are people who should not be allowed on the streets. Maybe. But sometimes, like mentioned in our prayer, there are desperate people who do things they need to do to survive. We see it in ourselves when we talked emotional, when we have trauma, and our coping skills are not particularly healthy for us in the long term. And we know that someday we may have to go back to that person, bad coping skills, and forgive them. To know they were just doing the things they had to do to survive. We were doing the things we had to do to survive. Co-author Riley writes about her father and the children who grew up with him in the city, like he did, watching their mothers and maybe their fathers work 3 or 4 jobs just to get by in the world. And jobs were scarce. And in places like Milwaukee, all of the manufacturing moved out of the city and difficult to get to. And then crack was unleashed on the streets. And for a few minutes, much less time, you could make the same amount of money that your mother made working all day. And she wouldn't have to work. You wouldn't have to work like she did. And maybe she wouldn't have to work like she is. And what do you do? What decisions do you make? And if crack cocaine on the streets is too controversial, our hero, in both the book and the movie and the play and the musical Les Miserables, was sentenced to prison for stealing bread because he and his family were starving in France in the days of the revolution. And he stole bread out of their desperation to survive. Cole goes on to write, come on, focus. It'll be fine, we'll catch up. Oh, there we go. Cole goes on to write, we cannot trust a society that makes judgments on the morality of a person without taking responsibility for how its own morality has instigated the condition that calls for such desperate decision-making. This is a society that rarely demands justice in favor of the desperate, but will always demand it in favor of the judge, the powerful. In the company of these tainted moral authorities, the most significant wrong will never be the one that caused all the others. For Cole, and for the God that Cole understands and knows and loves, and I think for me too, justice isn't about retribution or punishment. It's about dignity. Justice then is about recognizing and affirming the dignity of all people, whether they are victim or villain or perpetrator, and recognizing that someone can be both or neither or none. Justice demands a different world. It demands that all of creation be treated with dignity that has already been bestowed upon it by the divine. Cole goes on to write, justice doesn't choose whose dignity is superior. It upholds the dignity of all those involved, no matter whom it offers or what it costs, or who it offends or what it costs. There is no liberation without justice. Even when demanding retribution, justice does not demean the offender's dignity, it affirms it. It communicates that what has been done is not what the offender has been made for. They too were made for beauty. In justice, everyone becomes more human. Everyone bears the image of the divine. Justice does not ask us to choose. In our reading today, Habakkuk is writing from a time in the Babylonian exile. And in his weariness and frustration, he demands God to do something. Cole writes that the Christian story is the tension between the promise of justice and liberation and the unjust and oppressive patterns in our daily lived experiences. We use churchy words when we talk about justice, and we're trying to make sense of the world around us, of what we can do and what we can't do. We use words like mercy and justice, and when I am asked what those mean, the difference is, and it's arbitrary completely, and it's my definition. No, it's someone else's definition. I have made my own. Is that they both ask a question, and they both demand an action. Mercy asks, what can I do for you right now? And then does it. And justice asks, how did you get here? And then advocates and moves and changes the situation, the systems and the structures that have led to the injustice that has brought someone there. You can feed someone. And then ask the question of why are they hungry? And what are the systems that have led them here? And that work has not always been done, but should always be done in conversation with the community it is affecting. Otherwise, we're just going in and telling people what they need. Nobody likes that. Ask your 3-year-old friends. Nobody likes that. It means that justice and dignity of relationships and conversations and hearing somebody and recognizing what it is that they need and being recognizing what it is that they need and being reflective enough to know that we are part of the systems that have led to the injustice because we're alive. And it is advocating and protesting and voting and realizing that the systems aren't going to be the things that set us free, that sometimes we have to make the systems change on our own. And that is liberation. Cole writes, I believe that the individual and collective and cosmic journey is the path of unearthing and existing in our own liberation. But liberation is not a finality or an endpoint. It is an unending awakening. And Cole is not writing this from the perspective of someone who looks like me. Liberation is often for other people because the system often works for people who look like me. But the systems of white supremacy and patriarchy are just as damaging for the people for whom it was designed to work for as it is for those who are oppressed. As much, it is damaging for everyone. It's the system that tells little boys to not have their feelings and then mocks grown men when they do. Or says that when mom goes away to do something for the evening, that dad is babysitting his own kids. And that dads who want to spend too much time with their children or their babies or their daughters playing with daughter-like things should be mocked. Or mocking boys who play with dolls. That is patriarchy. for everyone. Freedom, liberation is possible. It is behind us and before us and beyond us. Liberation for all of creation is present and possible, and to be free of the systems that try to keep us small, because those exist, those keep us bound up, that tell us we're not enough, that tell us we would be enough if you just buy one more thing, that tell us our feelings are too big, that what or who we love is wrong, that tell us there is one way to live, one way to dress, one way to present ourselves, that tell us we don't belong here or there, that tell us we have no reason to be angry or sad, that say our limitations make us less, that tell us there is no peace, there is no way forward, that tell us to accept the world as it is. And too often, if we could just have the right power, if we could set the rules ourselves, if we could get into the system, we could change it from the inside. And I think maybe that happens sometimes, slowly. But more often than not, if we found ourselves in the system, we end up becoming a cog in that machine. That freedom can't come at the expense of someone else, just like justice can't come at the expense of another. Cole writes, in the pursuit of liberation, we do not need to pine after the power of the oppressor. We have to long for our own power, to be fully realized. We don't want to steal or dominate someone else's land. We want the agency to reclaim and establishing our own places. We don't want to silence the voices of our enemies. We want to be able to safely center our own voices and be believed. Liberation recognizes I won't get free by anyone else's bondage. Liberation for ourselves and for all of creation, for all of humanity, will not come from the systems and the structures we have today. Not from the way that we have always done things. We have to learn to forge new paths, not with political power, vote, not with weapons of war, not with taking away from others or seeking their power for ourselves. My liberation as a woman and as a queer person is wrapped up in the liberation of everyone else, in your liberation, in the liberation of every person of color, of every transgender person, of every Palestinian, of every woman and man, and everyone in between. Your liberation, your dignity, your belovedness, your belongingness, those are who you are, not because of anything you have done or earned or said. It is who you are because you are created by God and loved by God. People think liberation is a future unfolding before us. Did I write this in here? Yeah. But it stretches out in all directions. Toni Morrison wrote in Beloved, this is really the better quote for where I was. There it is. Maya Angelou said, "The truth is no one can be free until everybody is free." You already heard my next part. You've heard this one. We'll keep going. Toni Morrison, in the book Beloved, wrote that freeing yourself is one thing, but claiming ownership over that freed self is another. Living liberation can be difficult. Living it for ourselves is a lifelong process, letting go of the things that we have heard, that have been said to us and spoken over us, that have told us who we need to be or supposed to be. It's a lifelong process, something we have to reclaim and remind ourselves over and over again. But it is not my or our liberation alone. Liberation for ourselves and for all of creation and all of humanity is discovered, affirmed, and given opportunity to be claimed through creativity, through rest and storytelling, through memory, through repair and joy, through feeling rage and lament and fear, and finding courage and compassion and movement. It is through belonging to each other and to all of creation. It is through justice rooted in love and affirming the dignity of all. Justice is through seeing the full humanity in ourselves, the full image of Godness in ourselves, and learning to love it, to feel it, and then extending that to everyone else, to all that is made in God's image, and to all that the divine hand has touched, and all of creation. Sometimes, justice looks a little different than we think it might. Now, this is how Cole ended her section, her chapter, the whole book. This is how she ended the book in the last chapter on justice. To be human in an aching world is to know our dignity and to become people who safeguard the dignity of everyone around us. To protect everything may seem like too great a call, but we will not survive without it. Everything should be called by its name, so let justice roll down and twist and juke like a movement. Let it march into your bones, into the seas of charred cane. Wash the earth in justice and watch what rises to the surface. Curses can't breathe underwater. And I wanted to give us a chance to see what justice might look like if it were done differently and a little creatively, and I hope this video works. And then we'll have our song.
Hi, I'm Micah Hendler,
And I am Amir Abu Arqub.
and we're the leaders of the Jerusalem Youth Chorus, a Palestinian and Israeli music and dialogue project, raising our voices to push back against the violence surrounding us.
We reject war, occupation, and terror, and instead, we decided to sing for peace, justice, inclusion, and equality. At the Jerusalem Youth Chorus, we don't share the same opinions, and we disagree and have hard conversations about them every week. But what we do share is a shared future, despite what all politicians say.
I founded the Jerusalem Youth Chorus 12 years ago because of a simple fact, that we as human beings are hardwired to trust one another more when we sing together. Thank you. Singing actually in groups creates a container in which transformative conversations can happen, very hard conversations, even between people who have been raised to be enemies. And then through music, we're able to expand the impact of these encounters as our singers' voices raised together become a force for systemic change as music has powered social movements throughout history.
I joined the choir 10 years ago, and it is where I found my voice as a musician, as a Palestinian, and as Amir. And last year, I was so proud to step into the executive director role with a vision to create a youth singing movement to help youth find their voices across Israel-Palestine as I found mine. The Jerusalem Youth Chorus singers didn't stop meeting during the war because JYC, it's our home, and we're not gonna give up on each other.
The song that we'll be sharing with you all today was written by our singers after October 7th. And it really taps into the grief and the pain and the loss, and also the deep insight and powerful resilience that they have found in this time.
This violence didn't start on October 7th. This violence and the last war is just a very horrifying example of how Israelis and Palestinians are pitted against each other by the extreme leaders who need each other to stay in power. And it's always the normal people who pay the price.
We know that as a Palestinian-Israeli youth chorus, we do not single-handedly have the power to stop war. But we also know that the reason that war continues is because people feel there isn't a different way. We are the different way.
زيتون بتتمع زيت للجميع بلا تخوين بلا قطيع بالأرض بالسيف وبالشديد تحملني بذنوبي وحسناتي عيلتي وحارتي نشرة أخبار ولسه بتحكي باسم الزار. They say it's do or die. But when the day is done, what will be left behind? Only you and me with our futures intertwined. We live within the wars, we feel each other's pain. Because of you I know we must choose a different way. הילדה הכי יפה בגן, יש לה עיניים הכי עצובות בגן, והיא עומדת בחובה שפעם הייתה גן, ובוכה על כל אלה שאינם. הילדה הכי יפה בגן, לשיערה עוד ריח עשן. This darkness can't go on. But when the day is done, what will be left behind? Only you and me with our futures intertwined. We live within the wars, we feel each other's pain. Because of you I know we must choose a different way. What will be left behind? Only you and me with our futures intertwined. We live within the wars, we feel each other's pain. Because of you I know we must choose a different way. We must choose a different way.